When we look at the last 2 weeks, it's quite clear the geopolitical temperature gauge is spiking, particularly across West Africa and the broader Sahel region.
Yes, it is.
We've seen a sudden rush of major political and security events that demand very careful attention.
That's putting it mildly. The source material we synthesized for this deep dive shows a rapid and interconnected sequence of incidents. We really have to focus on two major areas.
And those are,
First, the diplomatic crisis. It's escalating through these reciprocal travel bans between the U.S. and key Sahel states. And second, there were targeted U.S. military airstrikes deep within Nigerian territory.
our objective today, then, is to cut through that noise so you can understand the immediate strategic impact. We need to synthesize the intelligence, identify the key decision makers, and, well, their differing motivations.
And analyze what these actions mean for local, national, and international stability.
Exactly. And we'll be reporting impartially on the perspectives we found in the sources, letting the facts, as they say, speak for themselves.
We aim to provide clarity, understanding the different rationales behind these actions, from Washington to Abuja to Bamako, is absolutely essential for grasping the current geopolitical reality.
Before we dive into the details, a quick word from our sponsor, ProWave AI. You are listening to a deep dive compiled using data from Stylo News, the AI-powered news application. Now, we mention this because Stylo News is the consumer version of Stylo Intel Ops software.
A tool built for enterprise operations. We're talking governments, military, and businesses.
Right. So you are essentially getting access to the same level of analysis that is designed to support global decision makers.
And this system is built to handle an overwhelming volume of information. It uses advanced AI to instantly link facts, synthesize complex situations, and it draws directly from hundreds of news articles and posts.
So you're getting the intelligence brief compiled in seconds.
Which lets us spend our time analyzing the implications for you.
Let's start with the diplomatic front then. This is where things became tense very, very quickly. The U.S. government announced an expansion of its travel bans in late December 2025 and early January 2026.
And this action targeted citizens from 39 countries, including key members of the Alliance of Sahel States, or AES. That's Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, and Chad.
And the official reasoning?
Well, the official U.S. reasoning, according to our sources, cited standard concerns, national security risks, insufficient screening protocols in those nations, and the presence of significant terrorism threats.
But what's truly fascinating here is the response from the African states.
The sheer speed and coordination of it, yes.
It wasn't just individual reactions, it was a nearly instantaneous collective application of the principle of reciprocity.
Exactly. Mali and Burkina Faso were first. They imposed equivalent visa bans on U.S. citizens, and they were followed immediately by Niger and Chad. This wasn't just a regulatory change.
It was a political statement.
A very strong one. Leaders like Chadian President Mohamed Dorby framed the ban not just as a policy reaction, but as an act of, well, necessary national pride, of dignity.
Arguing that the U.S. decision was unilateral?
Unilateral and made without prior consultation, yes. They argued it demanded an equivalent response to assert their sovereignty. And that move immediately raised the stakes in U.S.-African relations.
Given that, what is the strategic calculus at play for the AES bloc?
This is a clear signal of a decisive strategic pivot. The military governments leading Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. They are accelerating their efforts to distance themselves from traditional Western partnerships.
It's a dramatic assertion of sovereignty.
It is. And the vacuum left by the expulsion of French and increasingly U.S. military presence is rapidly being filled.
And our sources are very clear on who is filling that vacuum.
Indeed. It means deepening security and economic ties with Russia and China. For the U.S. and its remaining Western allies, these bans represent a significant strategic loss.
And on the ground, how does this play out for ordinary citizens?
For American citizens, whether they are aid workers, business people, academics mobility, business operations, and humanitarian work have all been disrupted.
But there's a more crucial impact, isn't there?
Yes. This action reinforces the strong nationalist and anti-Western rhetoric that the military governments are using to justify their power. It creates a narrative of self-reliance triumphing over perceived foreign interference, a very potent political tool.
So this diplomatic rift is hardening the geopolitical lines in the sand, and that directly impacts the ability of the U.S. and other Western nations to operate in the region.
Yes, and that political tension sets the stage perfectly for the second major incident we need to discuss.
The precise security action taken by the U.S.
Exactly. Moving from policy to precision strikes. The second major event was the targeted U.S. military action conducted by AFRICOM, the U.S. Africa Command.
This was on Christmas Day, December 25th, 2025.
That's right. AFRICOM launched airstrikes against camps associated with ISIS affiliates in northwest Nigeria's Sokoto state.
And this action, which was near the border with Niger, clearly signaled continued U.S. counterterrorism engagement, even with all the diplomatic turmoil next door.
The targets specifically included militants of the Islamic State's Sahel province and a group known as the Lakurawa militia.
Now, here is where the political messaging surrounding the operation caused significant tension.
A great deal of tension. The U.S. administration under President Trump was very explicit in its justification. They framed the strikes as necessary to protect Nigerian Christians from terrorist groups.
Calling it a hardline stance against religious violence.
They did. Some administration sources even aggressively described it as a Christmas present to terrorists.
That is an aggressively strong phrase for diplomacy, and it generated a specific reaction, didn't it?
An immediate and strong pushback.
Yes.
While the Nigerian government, led by President Tinubu, confirmed intelligence cooperation, they rejected the U.S. narrative.
They rejected the idea that this is solely about religious persecution.
Completely. Nigerian officials emphasized that terrorism affects all communities in Nigeria, Muslims and Christians alike. They stressed that the violence is a complex regional security issue, not just about faith.
And that's a critical nuance.
Absolutely, particularly since the strikes hit an area predominantly populated by Muslims who are themselves frequent victims of this very violence.
That pushback suggests Nigeria is carefully balancing the need for international help with the need to control its own narrative.
And maintain its sovereignty, yes.
Tell us more about the targets, specifically this Lakurawa militia. What does that local complexity look like?
Well, the sources describe a complicated reality on the ground in Sokoto State. The Lakurawa militia, it initially evolved from armed herders. Sometimes they were even hired by local leaders to help fight common banditry.
But they transformed.
They did. They became a violent, entrenched organization, imposing radical laws, collecting taxes from local populations, and engaging in large-scale violence. This evolution is crucial.
Why is that?
Because it demonstrates that the line between banditry, communal conflict, and entrenched terrorism is incredibly blurred in this region.
So at the national level, these strikes signify a major shift for Nigeria.
Yes, they signal a national willingness to reclassify the destructive phenomenon of banditry as an act of terrorism, and crucially, a preparedness to accept targeted international military assistance.
It's a pragmatic decision.
Entirely. It's focused on tackling a multi-faction threat that has proved intractable through domestic means alone.
If we connect these two distinct events, the diplomatic isolation of the AES bloc and the continued counterterrorism strikes in Nigeria, we see them unfolding against a deeply unstable regional backdrop.
That instability is persistent and, frankly, tragic. Just look at the patterns of violence that underscore the region's fragility in the last 2 weeks alone.
There was the attack in Niger.
A devastating jihadist attack in Niger on January 4th and 5th. It was linked to the Group for the Support of Islam and Muslims, or JNI.
And the targets were high profile.
Precisely. That attack resulted in the killing of the prefect of Terodi, a man named Captain Chaibu Mali, and his entire family.
It's a stark reminder.
It is. A reminder that even after the expulsion of French and U.S. forces, the extremist threat remains potent, pervasive, and capable of operating freely.
And we're seeing similar violence in Nigeria beyond the strike zone.
Relentless violence. Bandit attacks in central Nigeria's Niger state resulted in over 30 deaths, numerous kidnappings. It prompted President Tinubu to order security agencies to intensify their operations.
So the threats are coming from multiple internal factions.
Which makes comprehensive security almost impossible. Furthermore, you cannot ignore the regional fragmentation playing out diplomatically.
The situation between Benin and Niger?
Yes, the mutual expulsion of diplomats between Benin and Niger following a foiled coup attempt in Benin. Niger was suspected of involvement.
This demonstrates that deep rift. Benin is pro-Western, with close ties to France and Nigeria, while Niger is a core member of the anti-Western AES.
And that diplomatic fallout significantly challenges the cohesion of regional bodies like ECOWAS, making a united regional security approach, increasingly difficult.
And all of this is happening against a wider backdrop.
And an environmental one. The sources consistently highlight that these crises are exacerbated by unprecedented high temperatures in the Sahel in 2025. This intense climate stress places additional pressure on scarce resources and accelerates societal vulnerability across the entire region.
Let's analyze the distinct courses of action, the COAs, that the key decision makers are pursuing right now.
And the inherent tensions between those strategies. On one side, you have the AES bloc Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. They've adopted a COA centered entirely on anti-imperialism and self-reliance.
Which involves what, specifically?
Immediate, large-scale joint military operations. That includes launching a 5,000-strong multinational battalion against extremists. This is their public attempt to prove they don't need Western help.
And at the same time, they're deepening ties elsewhere.
With Russia and China, yes, to secure alternative security and economic support.
Conversely, the COA adopted by Nigeria and the U.S. is one of, well, continued but targeted cooperation.
The U.S., through AFRICOM, focuses on targeted strikes to degrade IS capabilities. Nigeria's leadership, however, has the incredibly difficult job of balancing this operational necessity with maintaining strict sovereignty.
And ensuring the counterterrorism narrative reflects their complex domestic reality.
Right, not a simple religious conflict. This tension is critical. Former Niger Delta agitators, for instance, praised the U.S. strikes, but then urged the Nigerian government to complement military efforts with significant social development.
To address the roots of the unrest.
Not just the military symptoms, exactly.
Turning to the sources, how did traditional media and analytical sources cover this two-week period?
Traditional outlets like Vanguard, Al Jazeera, and UPI maintained a very objective tone. They reported factually on the diplomatic rifts and emphasized the application of the principle of reciprocity.
Sticking to official statements and timelines.
Strictly. But the analytical sources, they dug deeper into the implications.
As you'd expect.
Right. Sources like the Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS, and The Conversation, they detail the implications for sovereignty, particularly concerning Nigeria's decision to accept the U.S. strikes.
And the public reaction. What did you find on social media and regional advocacy channels?
That sentiment is complex, but it's focused. There is broad support for calls for African autonomy and a general criticism of external interference.
But that's tempered with something else.
It is. It's tempered by widespread frustration over the persistent insecurity and the failure of regional governments to provide stability for their own populations. There's a deep desire for self-determination, but a palpable anxiety over the lack of safety.
Given the intense volatility of the last 2 weeks, we need to focus on what to watch for next in 2026.
In the realm of diplomacy and law, the travel bans are not settled. We should anticipate legal challenges in U.S. courts against the expanded restrictions.
And behind the scenes.
Watch for any back-channel diplomatic negotiations between the U.S. and the affected African governments. Their tone and outcome will dictate whether these restrictions remain a permanent fixture.
On the security front, all eyes will be on the Alliance of Sahel States.
The operational effectiveness of their new 5,000-strong joint military force is a significant watch item. They are betting their legitimacy on this force, proving it can succeed where Western forces often struggled.
And finally, Nigerian stability.
We must monitor that. Look for enhanced social and infrastructural development efforts, especially in restive regions like the Niger Delta. Without development, targeted strikes are merely a temporary fix.
That concludes our deep dive into the source material from the last 2 weeks.
And as a reminder, you have been listening to analysis compiled by Stylo News.
Stylo News is available as a mobile and computer application that you can download and customize for personal intelligence-style briefs. It draws from hundreds of traditional news sources and social media feeds.
It uses advanced AI to quickly synthesize information. You can ask Stylo complex natural language queries like, what were the diplomatic and military implications of the recent U.S. actions in the Sahel?
And you'll receive an instant synthesized report complete with source citations.
It's remarkably efficient.
For those interested in accessing AI-powered news on demand, you can subscribe to Stylo News today. Start your free 7-day trial by visiting www.stylonews.com. That's STYLONEWS.y.com. Switching gears now, thank you for joining us for this analysis of the source material. We hope it helped you synthesize these complex global events.
We appreciate you trusting us with your time. If you have a topic you're deeply curious about and want the source material analyzed, please do let us know.
Before we go, consider this. If the Alliance of Sahel States successfully uses its new ties with Russia and China to dramatically improve security without Western input, does the principle of reciprocity, now applied to visas, eventually extend to economic and security architecture across the entire continent?
That is something worth mulling over. Until next time, stay well informed.